From the gridiron to the hardwood, James Mesh breaks it all down. It's time for another episode of Cleats and Sneaks.
We're back at it again with another edition of Cleats and Sneaks, previewing the NFL season. We're less than a week away at this point, and we're getting closer and closer to the start of the season. I want to, this time, stay in the East, but this time, instead of doing the NFC side, since that's what we did last episode, let's look at the AFC East, look at the Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots, Miami Dolphins, and the New York Jets. And we'll start off with the easy one, the team that I think is actually going to win the division. Let's go with the Buffalo Bills. Not much has changed, I guess you could say, because when you look at their offseason moves and you look at the draft that they had, not a whole lot of big-time guys. If you want to look at some of the free agents that they got, Josh Palmer was on a 3-year deal. They also got Michael Hawk to bolster that edge rushing room. They even got Joey Bosa to do the same as well, and even got Larry Ogunjobi. They got a bunch of guys to help fix up that defensive line, add more depth to those positions. But overall, the main guys, Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, AJ Epinesa, but being able to get guys like Bosa, even though Ogunjobi is going to be suspended to start the season. And same thing with Hawk. Overall, defensive line, you can't be too mad at it. You like it a lot. Even looking at the linebacker position, Shaq Thompson, Terrell Bernard, and Dorian Williams, solid overall group. Matt Milano still in the fold as well, with Landon Jackson, a guy that they got out of this year's draft to help there as well on the defensive line. When you look at the cornerback position, you look at the overall room in the secondary. Tre'Davious White, he's back. Taylor Rapp is another guy still there at safety. But Cole Bishop getting his chance over there as a starting position, since Damar Hamlin, even though he's been in the fold and been in the headlines multiple times and had his opportunities, he's not quite there. He's not quite a starting safety, but having him there as a depth piece, that's not too bad. But having Christian Benford, who they extended, even having Teron Johnson, who they also extended, that helps in the secondary as well. So even though a couple guys did end up departing for Buffalo over the offseason, guys like Von Miller, Amari Cooper, who they signed in the middle of the season, having Quentin Norris, Rasul Douglas, Matt Collins, they had plenty of guys, even Jordan Phillips and Quentin Jefferson, who are still waiting to see if they can get signed with a team at some point this season. Moved on from a lot of guys, but overall, quite a bit of their depth is still there. If anything, they actually just the other day brought in a familiar face to be a part of their practice squad safety. That was Jordan Hoyer. So overall, still really like the group, still like the defense as well. When you look towards the offensive side of the ball, how about the MVP Josh Allen? Still there at quarterback, unsurprisingly. He'll have Mitchell Trubisky backing him up once again. Familiar trend with a lot of teams now at this point, only rolling with 2 quarterbacks, since they do have the rule of the emergency third. They could just have one of their practice squad guys be the emergency third, and then just have that other 53rd spot be occupied towards a different position, so there's actually more depth. They didn't do so with the running back position because they only have 3. How about James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson at the moment? Cook finally got his extension. That was a big-time storyline throughout the offseason. When were they actually going to do it? They finally got it done just the other week. So at this point, everything should be honky-dory. No worries there. When it comes to the wide receiver position, you're still waiting for somebody to really, and I mean really, step up as a go-to target on the outside. I know that Khalil Shakir actually stepped up a good bit last year, having over 800 yards and 4 touchdowns, and getting an extension himself as he is entering his year 25 season at 6 foot 190 pounds. Still more of a slot guy overall. You're kind of waiting for someone like Keon Coleman, who was a local product here in Louisiana. You're waiting to see if he can actually start to step up, since he was a second-round pick for the Buffalo Bills just last season. Again, I brought up the Josh Palmer situation and brought him up as an extra depth piece and another guy for Josh Allen to throw to. I don't think he's going to have that much of a role in the offense, since overall, you look at his career, he's put up some solid numbers, especially in his time with the Chargers, but it's not like it was ever anything big time, if you know what I mean. Like, the most yards he ever put up was 700 769 yards. I was going to say 770, pretty much the same. But that was back in his second season in 2022. Since then, he's put up less than 600 each season. I think he's a good overall receiver and a good wide receiver 3, which is perfect for this offense. But you need to make sure that someone actually steps up on the outside. I like the idea of a wide receiver by committee, but I like the idea more of having a dominant guy that you can go to in situations. Maybe it's Keon Coleman that can do so. We will have to see, though. Dalton Kincaid, he's had plenty of opportunities. Will have more opportunities this year to prove why he should and is the tight end 1, since they've slowly started to phase out Dawson Knox. But after having a down sophomore slump season from Kincaid, you're not quite sure what's supposed to happen in this tight end room. Naturally, it should be Kincaid who really steps up, since he was a former first-round pick for the Bills. But much like Keon Coleman, I've got a question mark there of, I'm hopeful that he can get it done. I think he can get it done, but will he? I don't have the confidence to utterly say he will no doubt do it. I want Keon Coleman and I want Dalton Kincaid to actually step up and have the roles that they should after having the draft capital that the Bills invested into them. They have the faith. They just need to make sure that they cover their rear ends to make sure that even if they don't work out, they have other guys that they can go to as well. Now, when it comes to the offensive line, Deion Dawkins at left tackle, still the standard there over there in Buffalo. David Edwards at left guard. Connor McGovern, the center. Osiris Torrance, another local product here from Louisiana, at right guard. And then Spencer Brown at right tackle. This is a really, and I mean really good starting 5. You have other guys on the offensive line that are backing them up, and it's okay depth, but having a couple guys that have got some injuries, including McGovern, that's kind of dealing with one here and there, might alter his play to begin the season, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. Again, overall with the roster, it's still really good. Made some minor adjustments here and there, added to some depth, even added a new starter in Joey Bosa on a 1-year deal. I really like this roster, and I have no doubt in my mind that this is going to be the team that wins the AFC East division. When you look towards the next team, though, a team that people are very high on, I'm not as high on, but I do think that they can actually start to turn things around after having a top 5 pick in this past draft, that being the New England Patriots. And with them, I definitely can understand why people are really buying into the hype. The fact that they now have one of their former players as their head coach, who really proved himself in Mike Vrabel back at Tennessee with the Titans. I get it. I can completely understand, but you do want to make sure that the program is more stable, because last year and what we had seen over the last couple of years, since the end of the Tom Brady era, since the end of Bill Belichick over there in New England, it has not looked like the Patriots of old of what we've seen from the past 2+ decades. They're in a transition. You need to make sure that the stability of the program is back to where it once was before. I think you can absolutely see it from Mike Vrabel. He is a proven winning head coach. My only thing is he going to absolutely change them from basically 0 to hero within 1 year? I think it's realistic that they can win 8, maybe 9 games, but to go as far to say they win double digits and even get the 5, 6, or 7 seed in this playoffs, I'm not as confident to say so. Now, the thing is, when you look at the roster and you look at what they've done over the offseason, it's not like I'm really mad at what they did. I think it was pretty solid. They got some guys like Milton Williams from the Eagles. That's really good to bolster on the defensive line, especially after they traded Devon Godshaw to the New Orleans Saints. They even added the quote-unquote big-time receiver that we've, and a lot of people have been waiting the Patriots to do. They ended up getting Stephon Diggs. They also got a cornerback in Carlton Davis, and even also added other guys like Harold Landry and Robert Spillane from the Raiders. Morgan Moses was a tackle that they really needed to address. Tackle position in the offensive line overall, I was not a fan of with the Patriots last year. And then they also added other guys like Garrett Bradbury. They added plenty of guys to bolster this roster, much needed. Drake May going into year number 2, I feel like you could expect him to take that next step forward. I just don't expect him to be an absolute world beater. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's got a chance to prove himself and really develop over these next couple of years. But again, I'm just not quite there. When you look at the running back room, Ramondre Stevenson is the starter right now, but I think we can all agree that TreVeyon Henderson, the rookie running back coming out of Ohio State, he is looking to prove himself and be in the next fold of running backs that are the next star guys. We'd seen before and for quite a while with the Patriots, it was more of a running back by committee. We might see that to start off, but I think the talent of TreVeyon Henderson is going to soon overcome Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, and this is going to be Henderson's running back room to lead. Now, when it comes to the wide receiver position, I bring up the addition of Diggs. Very nice to see. They also had brought in Matt Collins, and they still have other guys like Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte, and they even drafted Kyle Williams. Now, you're relying on a guy like Jalen Polk to see if he can actually step up in year number 2 after a very disappointing rookie season, but he will be out for the year and is on IR. Now, the thing is with this wide receiver position, I like a lot of the guys. I think Matt Collins is a steady veteran that you can go to if you need, but you are looking for these young guys outside of Stephon Diggs to really try and carve themselves a role. There will be plenty of competition there and plenty of opportunities. Demario Douglas, he's had his chance. Let's see if he can actually prove himself and actually maybe even have a more productive season now that a guy like Stephon Diggs is in that wide receiver room leading the way. A guy that's really stepped up in the preseason and the training camp, how about Efton Chisholm III? He was a guy that really showed up and showed out through the majority of the preseason. He ended up with 2 touchdowns on 12 catches through those 3 games. Not too shabby, to say the very least. Now, what is interesting is they still are running those 2 tight ends in Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. Both of those veterans will be back for yet another year. So those are some safety valves for Drake May to dump off to. But my question is, how is the offensive line going to look? I bring up the addition of Morgan Moses to play at right tackle. I brought up Bradbury to be their starting center. Those were nice additions. Now, I am curious about Mike Onwenu. It's another name I'm struggling with. But I am curious. These guards, I do worry. Mike, we're just going to go with Mike. Mike was a tackle, but they have him at guard right now. And then having left guard as Jared Wilson, not as very high on, but I do love the fact that they ended up drafting Will Campbell. Now, my question is, Will Campbell, is he actually going to be your long-term tackle? Or do you see yourself over the next year or 2 try to transition him to help secure and better make that interior of the offensive line and then end up drafting another offensive tackle, say either in this upcoming draft or in 2027? I think that's a very real possibility, but for right now, the number 4 overall pick, Will Campbell out of LSU, is their starting left tackle. When you look at towards the defensive side, I brought up the big guy, Milton Williams, who is going to be the anchor on the defensive line, but they still have other guys like Keon White and Christian Barmore, and they even have Anthony Jennings. I bring up some of the other guys like Robert Spillane and Harold Landry, who were guys that were signed over the offseason. Landry coming from the Tennessee Titans as well, so he's definitely familiar with the coach. Carlton Davis, Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Christian Gonzalez, one of the very young and up-and-coming cornerbacks in this league, as well as Marcus Jones, rounds out the starting safety and cornerback room. So the overall safety and secondary room, I like it a lot. Of course, that's usually what you expect from Patriots teams, is a strong secondary, a solid linebacker room, which I think is probably better than what we've seen over the last handful of years, and then a pretty respectable defensive line as well. And I think you further see that as well with the fact that they gave that big-time contract to Williams after winning this previous Super Bowl. So overall, I think this is a roster and a team that's trajected in the right direction. I just don't want to project them to go from, 4 wins last year and having a top 4 pick to all of a sudden over doubling it and winning the playoffs. It's not the most outlandish thing to think. However, I'm not going to go as far to say that. But I do think we will see some significant improvement from the New England Patriots in 2025. Now, the opposite for me can be said for the Miami Dolphins. A lot has happened to them, and a lot of it I don't like. The big distractions of, is Tua going to stay healthy? Is Tyreek Hill actually committed? Is Jalen Waddle actually going to be a guy that can step up and actually be productive, much like we had seen back in his rookie season? Because the last 2 seasons have not been as productive. That's a big thing. And not only that, but they also had Teron Armstead, their left tackle, retire over the offseason. And what have they done to improve this offense? Not much. They drafted Quinn Ewers in the 7th round as their 3rd-string quarterback. They brought in Alexander Madison, who ends up being on IR anyway. You bring in Darren Waller, who was previous retired, but how much does Darren Waller have left? They had Jonnu Smith, but they let him go in free agency. I don't like anybody else in this tight end room because they have Julian Hill and Tanner Connor. What are those guys supposed to do for you? You're relying on a 31-year-old previously retired Darren Waller to possibly be your 3rd or 4th receiving option outside of Hill and Waddle. And again, I still wonder about the commitment to this team for Tyreek Hill. They have Malik Washington, who has showed signs over the preseason, which is good to see. But what else do they have? Taj Washington, D. Eskridge, and Nick Westbrook-Akine, who had a crazy middle-of-the-year stretch with touchdowns last year, had 8 touchdowns in an 8-game stretch. Pretty incredible to see, but I don't expect much of a role for him in 2025 with Miami. The running back room, Devon Achane, still really good, but how many touches are you going to give to that guy? Like, he's absolutely incredible. He's great in space. But the thing is, with him being 5'9", 190 pounds, and how many touches he got last year, I expect him to get another this year. But is this going to be a concern over the long term for the Miami Dolphins? I think that's something that Coach McDaniel has to really look out for as the season goes along. Can other guys actually step up for you? Jalen Rao, he's going to be doubtful and is injured right now to start the season. So Ollie Gordon the second, is he actually going to step up and have a role in this running back room as well? Take some pressure off of Devon Achane. We will have to see. But I think overall with this offense, I think they need to have a whole change. Like the scheme, the system. Coach McDaniel actually has to make sure that this is different because the way that this offense is lined up right now, I don't love it. To replace Teron Armstead is Patrick Paul. They have Aaron Brewer, who's still their center, which is good. And then they still have a young Austin Jackson, who they recently got in the draft. But James Daniels and Jonah Savaiana, again, another name that I struggle with. But I don't love this offensive line. They didn't address it enough the way I would love it to. I think the offense needs a system change. Some guys are either injured, have a huge time injury risk history, or they don't feel like they're committed to the team, especially long term. So I have huge question marks for this Miami Dolphins team and this Miami Dolphins offense overall. Now the defense, I feel a little bit better, especially since some of these guys on the defensive line are going to be coming back after being injured and hobbled for part of last year. I feel better. Chop Robinson, Zach Zeeler, Benito Jones, Bradley Chubb. The front 4, I like it. I even like some of the guys that they brought in from the draft, like Kenneth Grant. They have Jordan Phillips after all. And they have Matthew Judon. Let's see the fact that he is more of a depth piece at this point. I remember Judon was a phenomenal main pass rusher for those New England Patriots for a while. Let's see what he's got left. But I think him being more of a reserve role, I do like that. So the front 4, the down 4 linemen for Miami, give it a thumbs up. I think it's pretty good. Jalen Phillips and then Jordan Brooks as those outside linebackers, especially with Phillips being predominantly more of another edge rusher in a sense and another guy that can get into the backfield for you. Those are also solid. But I do wonder about this secondary. Now, they did end up making the trade, sent Jalen Ramsey to Pittsburgh, and got their old guy back in Minkah Fitzpatrick. So they upgraded their safety room. It's going to be Fitzpatrick and Ashton Davis, who's an all right safety. But Rasul Douglas, Storm Duck, who I've heard good things about Storm, but can he be a reliable cornerback 2 for you? We'll have to see. And then they have Jason Marshall Jr. as their projected starting nickelback. Overall, I like the front 4. I'm okay with the defense overall. I don't think it's going to be too bad. But the offense is where I have the big-time question marks and the big-time concerns. They had a pretty less than stellar season last year. You saw them kind of project down. You didn't like where they were headed. I didn't feel like what they did over the offseason was enough. And even though they had a very okay record at 8-9, it wasn't too bad. And they started to look better towards the second half of the season. But the losses that they made compared to the additions that they have, I don't think it's going to be enough, especially when you're at a very tough AFC conference. I don't love it for the Miami Dolphins. And if I'm going to be honest, I think they're going to end up fighting for a top 5 pick in next year's draft. Then for the final team, the New York Jets, I don't want to spend too much time on them because they're the Jets and I don't expect too much from them. Overall, them bringing in Justin Fields, that was nice to see after getting rid of the Aaron Rodgers experiment. Obviously didn't work. The thing, though, is they're obviously not committed to Justin Fields. They only gave him a 2-year deal where they say, we believe in you, Justin, but not that much. Because if you start to screw up, it's much easier to move on from you on a 2-year deal than, say, a 3 or a 4 or a 5-year contract instead. So there's some faith in Justin, and we've seen Justin Fields make plays. It's just, I don't think he can ever pick teams to correctly play for. Chicago never has been great developing quarterbacks. As of late, it's been the same, and you saw it was a very weird situation last year in Pittsburgh. And since when have he ever been confident in the development by the Jets organization? So the fact that he is on his third team now, and I'm not any more confident than I was the last handful of years since Fields got into the league, I don't expect much more. I mean, we're probably going to see more of the same stat line. He's going to be good running the ball, but being a consistent passer, it's just not in Fields' game right now as a pro. He just doesn't find the right coaching staff. I still don't think these guys are it. When you look towards the rest of the offense, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, it's a solid running back room, but we have big-time question marks about whether Hall is actually going to be on this roster, whether you want to say next year or even midway into this year when we get closer to the trade deadline. I think Braylon Hall is going to definitely carve himself more of a role going into this season. But overall, if they're going to be down as often as maybe we project them to be, because I don't think many of us project a lot of wins for the Jets in 2025, how often are they really going to be able to run the ball? I mean, really. When you look towards the wide receiver room, I think it's absolutely putrid. They ended up giving Garrett Wilson an extension, which is nice to see. I think Garrett Wilson's a really good receiver, but looking at the rest of these guys, like, are you seriously? Josh Reynolds, Allen Lazard, your wide receiver 2 and 3, and then you have Xavier Gibson, Arian Smith, and Irvin Charles as your the 3 backups? I'm good. Especially when you have a not very consistent quarterback in Justin Fields, and you're going to be behind a lot. These aren't the playmakers that you're going to be looking for if you want a potent passing attack. These ain't it, Chief. And then when you want to look at the tight end room, I love Mason Taylor. I was a big-time Mason Taylor fan going into this draft. I just didn't love the landing spot because the tight end position is always like a black hole for the New York Jets. Since when have we ever seen a New York Jet tight end really step up? It's been quite, and I mean quite a while since we saw anyone be effective in the passing game. So even though I like Mason Taylor as a prospect, I don't expect him to do much. And then they have 4 tight ends overall: Jeremy Ruckert, Stone Smart, and Jelani Woods. You really can't expect anything from any of those guys. The offensive line, and then they do have a fullback technically in Andrew Beck. Olu Fashanu, Josh Simpson, Joe Tippmann, Elijah Vera-Tucker, and Armand Membu. They've put a lot of investment into this offensive line, especially over these last couple of drafts, but I don't think it's enough. I think this is still going to be a very dysfunctional offense that is going to struggle to put up points because I don't think they have the right personnel, and I don't think they have the right coaching staff to actually have a productive offense. When it comes to the defense, I still think it's good. They still have a lot of big-time pieces there. Quinnen Williams, the big-time man in the defensive line on the interior. He is the anchor of that defense. He's got other guys to follow him, including Harrison Phillips and Will McDonald IV and Michael Clemens. not as big of a fan of those guys. But when you look at the linebacker room, Jamie Sherwood, Marcelino McGarry Ball, and Quincy Williams, it's an all right front seven, but it's definitely nothing to write home about. And then when you look at the secondary, Sauce Gardner also got his extension. And then you have Brandon Stevens opposite side of Sauce with Michael Carter II manning the nickel, and then the safeties being Tony Adams and Andre Sisco. I think it's an all right defense, but the fact that this offense can't make up for the deficiencies that this defense is going to have, I do worry about it a lot. So I think they're also going to be fighting for one of those bottom picks as well. I can't quite put who's going to be last in the division, but it's going to be potentially a tiebreaker. Like, I could see the Jets and the Dolphins having 5 or less wins. I think if I had to give the nod to who's going to be the worst in the division, probably ends up being the Jets. So I think overall, it's Buffalo number 1, make the playoff, host a playoff game, potentially even a number 1 seed. I think the Patriots have a good chance. I think they'll be in the hunt. I just don't think they'll be in the playoffs. But I do believe they'll be second in the division. And then it's going to be a big drop-off for the Jets and the Dolphins. I have the Dolphins number 3 in the division standings. And then in last place, Jets, Jets. That's going to do it for another edition of Cleats and Sneaks. When we come back next go around, we'll look towards the West, starting with the NFC. That's going to do it. I'll talk to you next time.